Okay, well, we looked last time that Descartes takes geometry, as was also mentioned in this video, as a model, as a paradigm for what a system of certain knowledge ought to look like. You know, where you start out, like Euclid did, with a few absolutely certain axioms, and you derive everything else from it. And what he does not like about other areas of philosophy and scientific thought is that too many things were in dispute. They weren't settled like they were in mathematics and geometry. So Descartes thinks, if I could do for philosophical and scientific knowledge what Euclid did for mathematical knowledge, and specifically for Euclidean geometry, the kind of plane geometry you and I studied in high school if we took geometry. He says, if I can do this, then things are going to be settled in philosophy, and I'll have a system of absolutely certain knowledge for philosophy and the sciences in just the same way as Euclidean geometry gives us a system of absolutely certain knowledge in that sphere of human activity. And so we saw that Descartes' way of proceeding, though, may seem a little unusual. He wants to clear away also some questionable beliefs in science and philosophy. And so he starts out looking for certain knowledge by taking the opposite tact and by asking, well, what can I doubt? What can I raise a doubt about? He uses a lot of skeptical arguments that were around in Descartes' day. They've been around, some of them, since the times of the Greeks. But he basically, in order to find a truth or some truths that are so certain that they're beyond doubt, Descartes' method, which we said is called methodic doubt or methodological skepticism or hyperbolic doubt, Descartes uses that method to raise doubts about what he knows in order to find a principle or some principles about which he cannot raise a doubt. And if he finds them, that's where he's going to find the basis of his system of knowledge for science and philosophy. So we already saw that he calls into question whole groups or classes of beliefs. And we saw that the first group of beliefs he considers are those beliefs that we think constitute knowledge because we know things according to what our senses tell us, right? And that is knowledge based on our senses. And we saw that he was able to raise a doubt about this by doing what? What did he conjecture about the knowledge he seems to have about what's going on in the room he's in? He says, how can I doubt such seemingly certain knowledge as that I'm sitting here in this room, with a piece of paper in my hands by a fire in my night clothes writing the meditations. And we can look around us. And none of us doubts that we're really on the first floor of a real building, that we're seated on real desks and chairs, that we have real stuff in our room. But Descartes says, how could I possibly raise a doubt about this? But then he says, wait a second, some things seem absolutely clear and certain to me. before, and I thought I was sitting in my living room like I think I'm doing now, and I found that I was dreaming. I woke up and I was unclothed in bed, and everything that I thought was knowledge and going on was fictitious in a dream. And you can see the parallel that we're trying to draw to the Matrix. The idea that you have a computer program in the Matrix building an utterly false reality for people. They think that they are certainly in 20th century America, small town America, but in fact they're in those pods with a computer program. So Descartes uses that to question what his senses tell him, and he says anything that is of composite objects could be called into question, and this would enable him to call into question not only knowledge that we think we have by the senses of what's going on around us commonsensically. Knowledge about what I think is in this room, or about what Descartes thinks is going on in the room he's sitting in when he's writing the Meditations. But Descartes' little dream conjecture enables him to raise a doubt about any knowledge we have via the senses, or via the senses aided by tools like telescopes and microscopes. So it enables him to raise doubts about the knowledge we have via the observational sciences. He says these sciences could possibly be dealing with dream objects in an unreal world. And things like physics, astronomy, and chemistry were around in Descartes' day in the late 1600s in much simpler forms, but they were around. So it enables him to raise a doubt about a lot of scientific knowledge. But then, does this conjecture that we might be dreaming enable us to doubt everything? Well, Descartes says no. He says, you know what, there's some knowledge that would remain knowledge, true knowledge, even if they're about fictitious dream objects. Even if I'm talking about a square that isn't real, that square is still going to have 4 equal sides, right? He says, even if I'm counting unreal things, 2 plus 3, the basic principles of arithmetic, are still going to hold, even in a dream. 2 plus 3 is still going to equal 5. So the conjecture that he might be dreaming doesn't enable him to cast doubt on everything he thinks he knows. But now here's where Descartes gets very weird to most people, if you don't already think he's weird. How is he going to raise some kind of a hyperbolic? Remember we said a hyperbolic doubt is an unusual, way out there in left field kind of doubt. But remember, he thinks if he can even raise a really way out there in left field kind of doubt about something, about a particular belief, he can say, well, that principle, that belief is not absolutely certain, so I'll set it aside as if it were false in my quest to find an absolutely certain, indubitable principle. So mathematics deals with the abstract qualities of things, quantity, size, number, and they are real even if these qualities are about unreal objects, is where he's going with this. But don't worry too much about that slide. But here's the point. Mathematical beliefs are beyond doubt. That's one principle. Now, how is he going to question that principle? He says, can anything cast doubt on such seemingly perfect knowledge as that a square has 4 sides and 2 plus 3 equals 5? Could anything ever make me think I go wrong in adding 2 plus 3 or counting the sides of the square? Now, here's where he brings in a mythical creature. But before going to the next slide, and if you look at these online, you already know where it goes next. But here's the point. Ask yourself this. I mean, if you think of it this way, where Descartes goes next seems a little more plausible and believable. Think about this. Have you ever gotten less than 100% on a math test? Have you ever done a math problem and screwed up along the way so that you got the wrong answer because you made a mistake along the way? Now, suppose there were an evil entity messing with your mind, messing with your head while you're trying to do math and leading you astray under wrong and false beliefs. Well, this is the point of Descartes bringing in the evil genius or the evil demon. And now remember, Descartes' a good Catholic boy. And he's not going to get himself into more trouble than he already is in by claiming that maybe God is systematically deceiving us. Plus, he knows that it seems inconsistent with the goodness of God that God should be systematically deceiving us about our beliefs. So he says, well, no, God wouldn't do that. And plus, later he needs to put God into the picture in just this way, that God is no deceiver. Now, Descartes asks a question and he doesn't answer it. God allows us to be deceived sometimes, why not always? But he says, well, if God is too good to deceive us, if he's the source of all goodness and truth, which is pretty much the standard Judeo-Christian view of God, he says, why couldn't I be deceived instead by some malicious demon or some evil genius? You know, so the idea is, if there were an evil entity deceiving me, he could deceive me even about such certain truths as the truths of mathematics. So he says, I mean, a powerful enough demon could delude him in all of his judgments about the reality of the sky, the air, the earth, color, shapes, sounds, all external things, about whether he really has a body, hands, eyes. He says, now, even mathematical beliefs are beliefs about which I can raise a doubt. Now, again, this is really going out on a limb. So at this point in our story, ladies and gentlemen, we need to ask ourselves, does it all end here? Is there no happy ending? You know, does Descartes ever find what he's looking for? And what is he looking for? Well, remember, he's looking for at least one certain principle that'll function for him like an axiom does in geometry. And he brings in Archimedes. And if you took physics in high school, you might remember what Archimedes said. Remember, Archimedes was famous for levers, right? And we call it leverage. And what can you do with a lever? Well, think of what children do on a seesaw. Those are levers. A child young child, a 5-year-old, can't lift another 5-year-old ordinarily, but a child can do it very easily if the other 5-year-old is at the end of a lever of a seesaw. We can lift some things using leverage that are too heavy for us to just lift, whether it be a rock or some building materials or whatever. And to really underscore this point, Archimedes said, you know what, if I had a long enough lever, using the leverage created by that lever, I could lift even the whole earth itself. Right? But what do you need in order to use that lever? You need a solid, fixed point on which to rest it. Right? A seesaw, which is really 2 levers, is anchored. So you need a fixed point. And that's what he's looking for. Archimedes claimed movement of the entire earth is possible from one firm, immovable point on which to rest his lever. And Descartes longs to find one certain unshakable truth on which to rest the whole of knowledge. How's he going to do this? Does he ever find what he's looking for, ladies and gentlemen? Of course, our story has a happy ending, because he does, right? Suppose he's in a dream. He's authored all of his thoughts. And he's convinced himself that all of his beliefs are open to doubt. That there isn't any world, sky, earth, minds, bodies. In other words, Descartes says, what if I'm convinced by these skeptical arguments to doubt everything? He says, you know what, the one thing I can't doubt is that I'm here to do the doubting. That I exist to raise a doubt about this stuff. He says, suppose an evil genius or an evil demon is deceiving me about all my other beliefs. Descartes says, the one thing I have no doubt about is that I'm here to be deceived. So he finds that the one thing he can't doubt is his own existence. And so the way he phrases this, he says a deceptive demon, he says, even if a demon's constantly deceiving me, I must exist to be deceived. And the way he phrases this basic principle is, he says the statement, I exist, I am, is true whenever I think it or pronounce it. That's the way he does it in Meditations. In a longer work, so that's his Archimedean point, his own existence. And we're going to finish the PowerPoint next time. The way he expresses this is, if you've heard anything about anything in philosophy before you ever took this course, you probably heard the phrase that Descartes uses next, cogito ergo sum. That's the way he expresses this in the Discourse on Method, a more technical, longer book. I think, therefore I exist, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Right? You've heard that phrase before. Most people do before they ever take a philosophy course. So Descartes says, this is my foundational point. This is a truth that is so true that I can't doubt it. Now, where Descartes goes next is to try, to fill in a little bit about what he means by this I. In other words, he says, if I exist, and that's the most important truth, my existence as an individual being, what is this, or who is this I that necessarily exists? Well, you're a little bit behind where the other ones are, because I got a little too long-winded. But I'm keeping you all pretty much together. Well, we're going to finish this up next time and look and see how Descartes tries to get out some of the attributes of matter as opposed to mind, and who and what we are as an immaterial thinking being. Because that's what Descartes says we are. We are basically our souls or minds. We're basically